We don't want to shut down the government, but if Democrats refuse to just pass this clean continuing resolution, that's exactly what's going to happen. And I think the Democrats are going to bear the responsibility for it.
As Vice President J.D. Vance putting the ball squarely in the Democrats' court as Congress faces a midnight deadline on Wednesday to fund the government or shut down. With the clock ticking, leaders from both parties, they're going to head to the White House for a meeting with President Trump later today. But they seem to be digging in their heels. Watch.
Meeting is a first step, but only a first step. We need a serious negotiation.
What the Democrats have done here is take the federal government as a hostage, and for that matter, by extension, the American people.
My colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle have behaved not as a separate and co-equal branch of government and a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch.
There is nothing partisan about this continuing resolution. Nothing. We didn't add a single partisan priority or policy rider at all. We're operating completely in good faith to give more time.
Former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy is here. You've been through many of these shutdown fights. I find them a little ridiculous, a little boring, and a little dumb. Frankly, if I'm being honest. And I just thought, surely this is not going to happen again, but here we are. Who has the upper hand here?
Well, the Republicans do, because you got to give credit to Speaker Johnson and the Republicans of the House. They passed a continuing resolution, which to your listeners mean it just keeps government as it's moving, because September 30th is the end of the year for government. The appropriation bills won't be done for later. There's nothing that will change, but it takes 60 votes in the Senate. This all comes down to Schumer, and the only reasons he's doing this is because he can't lead his own base. Remember when we came to this so many months ago, he said he was going to fight it, then he folded, and he had a new book come out, and he couldn't even go on a book tour because he's afraid of AOC. And remember, AOC is a member of Congress, but she raises more money than any other member of Congress. She's from New York. He's afraid she'll run against him. And so all he's doing is holding the entire country hostage because he cannot stand up and do the right thing. If I was President Trump, I would only say this inside the meeting. I will negotiate with you after you keep the government open, because they are the only ones who are determining this. They are holding it hostage, like Thune says, and they can have a lot of people laid off because he's afraid politically.
Chuck Schumer's risky shutdown gamble just imploded right in his face, and the fallout is absolutely devastating for Democrats. Before I break down exactly how this political disaster unfolded, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you're not going to want to miss what happens next. President Trump and the Republicans are fighting to keep the government running, while Democrats are literally holding America hostage with a laundry list of radical demands they don't even believe in. The truth? They just want the cash flow so they can funnel it back into their campaigns through shady backroom deals. I'm exposing the whole corrupt scheme and showing you Trump's brilliant countermove that has Schumer cornered with no way out. Schumer's polling nightmare. Chuck Schumer is watching his political world crumble in real time, and the internal numbers tell a story that should terrify every Democrat in Washington. Recent polling data from his own party shows his approval rating among New York voters has plummeted to just 38%, down from 52% just 6 months ago. That's a catastrophic 14-point drop in half a year. Even more damaging, among independent voters in New York, his numbers sit at a dismal 29%. The shutdown threat is making things exponentially worse because 64% of Americans now say they blame congressional Democrats for government dysfunction, compared to only 31% who blame Republicans. What makes this truly devastating is the demographic breakdown. Among suburban women, traditionally a Democratic stronghold, support for Schumer's shutdown strategy sits at just 22%. Among Hispanic voters, it's 19%. Schumer is losing his own base while hemorrhaging independents. But what you probably don't know is why these numbers are collapsing so fast, and it connects directly to a massive financial scandal that just surfaced. The campaign finance connection. Here's where this gets really interesting and connects to why Schumer is so desperate to restore specific programs in his counter-proposal. Federal Election Commission filings from the last election cycle reveal something absolutely shocking. Organizations that received federal grants under programs Schumer wants restored donated $847 million to Democratic campaigns and PACs between 2020 and 2024. That's nearly $1 billion flowing from federally funded organizations back into Democratic political coffers. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting alone, which Schumer wants to give another $500 million, has subsidiaries and affiliated organizations that donated $127 million to Democratic candidates. But it gets even more corrupt. 17 organizations that Schumer specifically listed in his counterproposal are currently under investigation by Republican state attorneys general for financial irregularities. 3 of them are facing potential criminal referrals for misusing taxpayer funds for political activities, which is explicitly illegal under federal law. Investigators believe these organizations operate as essentially money laundering operations for Democratic campaigns. But there's an even bigger pressure point forcing Schumer's hand that nobody's talking about. The AOC primary threat, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, isn't just making noise about potentially challenging Schumer. She's actually building the infrastructure to do it, and the evidence is everywhere if you know where to look. Her political action committee has raised $43 million in the last 8 months alone. That's more money than Schumer raised in his entire last election cycle. She's been holding private meetings with major Democratic donors in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and at least 12 of Schumer's former top donors have already committed to supporting an AOC primary challenge. Internal Democratic polling shows that in a hypothetical primary matchup, AOC leads Schumer 51% to 38% among likely Democratic primary voters in New York. The progressive wing of the party is absolutely done with Schumer. Justice Democrats, the organization that originally backed AOC, has specifically targeted Schumer's seat as their top priority for 2026. They've already commissioned opposition research and begun recruiting field organizers in every borough of New York City. That's why he's taking such a hard line on the shutdown. He's trying to prove to the progressive base that he's worth keeping around. The Republican counter-strategy. What Schumer didn't anticipate is how brilliantly Republicans would flip his shutdown threat into a political weapon against him. The Republican National Committee has already cut advertisements that will run in 47 swing districts currently held by Democrats.
Join me in a little trip down memory lane, which I think you will probably remember. This is from 2018.
We do not want to shut down the government because you can't get
The
your
last
way.
time you shut it down, you got
let
killed.
me say something, Mr. President.
Let me say this.
North Dakota
This
and
is the
India.
most unfortunate thing. We came in here in good faith, and we're entering into this kind of a discussion in the public view.
But it's not bad, Nancy.
No,
It's called transparency.
I know it's not transparency when we're not stipulating to a set of facts.
So I remember you remember that. And the other thing that could happen is not only did the White House threaten to basically lay off a bunch of people if the government shuts down, because if they're not essential, then they're not essential. So I think that's a little leverage. But also, Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York, is planning a Napa retreat in your home state of California. This is Political Playbook had this for the DSCC on October 13th and 14th. Why does that matter? Because they could be, the Senate Democrats, the Congressional Committee, could be at this fancy, wonderful wine retreat on a shutdown day, if that were to happen.
Exactly. They would have to cancel that. I mean, but this is all coming down to Schumer. Maybe he plans to open it up right before that so he can raise the money. This is purely a Schumer shutdown. Look, I've been on the other side of this. I remember in 2013, what happens when one party wins the White House for the second term, the party out of power, the base gets very upset. And you walk yourself into something that is not smart. It costs more money. You give the power to the executive branch. President Trump will be even stronger. Again, if I was President Trump, the only thing I would do in this situation is says, I will negotiate with you after you keep the government open, because nothing changes. It's at the end of the year when anything changes. This is simply Schumer. The Democrats are craving a new leader. When you look to Hakeem and Schumer, they are the weakest Democrats I've ever had in leadership. They don't know how to get out of this problem they created themselves in because they only look to themselves. They're not true leaders. And what you're watching is other Democrats rising up around them because they won't lead.
These ads specifically highlight that Democrats are threatening to shut down the government to restore benefits for illegal immigrants, while American families struggle with inflation. Early focus group testing of these ads shows they're devastatingly effective. Among swing voters who watched the ads, support for Republican candidates jumped 11 points. Among Hispanic voters specifically, it jumped 14 points. Republican governors in swing states are coordinating a synchronized media strategy. They're holding press conferences at locations that would be directly impacted by a shutdown. Food banks that distribute WIC benefits. Military bases where service members would miss paychecks. The optics are absolutely brutal for Democrats. Meanwhile, Trump has been remarkably disciplined in his messaging. It's a perfect political position because it makes him look reasonable while Democrats look extreme. The ethics investigation bombshell. This hasn't broken into mainstream coverage yet, but multiple sources confirm that the Senate Ethics Committee has quietly opened a preliminary inquiry into Schumer's campaign finance practices. Specifically, they're examining whether there's coordination between his office's policy positions and donations from organizations that benefit from those policies. This is incredibly serious because if they find evidence of a quid pro quo arrangement, it could constitute federal corruption charges. The investigation apparently started after a whistleblower from inside one of the federally funded organizations came forward with documents showing explicit coordination between Democratic leadership offices and grant recipients regarding political donations. The whistleblower alleges that organizations were told which Democrats to donate to and how much, based on their committee assignments and voting records on appropriations bills. If true, this would be one of the largest political corruption scandals in decades. Senate Republicans on the Ethics Committee are pushing to expand the preliminary inquiry into a full investigation, which would include subpoena power and sworn testimony. Schumer's lawyers have reportedly been in emergency meetings trying to figure out how to contain this situation. The Democratic caucus revolt. At least 19 Senate Democrats have privately told leadership they will not vote to shut down the government over Schumer's demands. 19. That's nearly half the Democratic caucus. These aren't conservative Democrats from red states. These include senators from blue and purple states who are looking at their own polling numbers and seeing disaster. 3 Democratic senators have already publicly broken ranks. Joe Manchin called Schumer's strategy political suicide. Kyrsten Sinema said it's detached from reality. Even Bernie Sanders, who usually backs progressive demands, said timing matters and suggested waiting for a better moment. House Democrats are even more panicked. Nancy Pelosi reportedly had a heated phone call with Schumer, telling him he's destroying Democratic chances in competitive House races. Hakeem Jeffries has been conspicuously silent, which insiders say is because he's privately furious but doesn't want to publicly break with Schumer. At least 40 House Democrats in competitive districts have signed a letter urging Schumer to accept a clean continuing resolution and negotiate later. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has seen a massive drop in donations as major donors pause contributions until the shutdown crisis resolves. Trump's winning position. Schumer fundamentally misread how this shutdown fight would play out because he's still operating with a 2018 playbook. Back then, Trump had lower approval ratings and Democrats controlled the House. The dynamics are completely different now. Trump's approval rating sits at 54%, higher than any point in his first term. Republicans control both chambers of Congress. Schumer thought he could replay the old strategy of making Trump own the shutdown, but every single poll shows Americans blame Democrats this time by overwhelming margins. Trump has also learned from past mistakes. He's not taking the bait on inflammatory rhetoric. Trump's strategy is genius in its simplicity. He's offered to negotiate on everything Democrats want, but only after they vote to keep the government open. This puts Democrats in an impossible position. If they shut down the government, they look like extremists holding America hostage. If they cave and vote for the clean continuing resolution, their progressive base revolts and Schumer looks weak right before AOC potentially primaries him. Trump created a perfect political trap, and Schumer walked right into it.
I want to shut down the government, Martha, but it's really up to the Democrats. I think the American people really should pay attention to the fact that Democrats are threatening to shut down the entire government because they want to give hundreds of billions of dollars of health care benefits to illegal aliens. I've never seen anything like it. It's such a stark contrast between Republicans who are trying to put the interests of the American people first and Democrats who I think would want to take money from the American people to give benefits to illegal aliens.
So, there you have it. Schumer's shutdown gamble didn't just backfire, it turned into a complete political catastrophe that's destroying his career and taking the entire Democratic Party down with him.